Oh, hey, sorry. Didn't see you there. Okay. Good morning, guys. Hope you're ready for an exciting day of learning. Today we'll be talking about the wars of 1812 and territorial expansion. First, number one, let's start off with some review. Remember last week we spent most of our week talking about the Corps of Discovery and Lewis and Clark. If you'll remember this picture, Corps of Discovery's conflict with the Teton Sioux, how it ended, what it foreshadowed for the Native Americans and for the federal government. So I want to talk about number two, the territorial expansion of the U.S. And if you look at your key terms, the first key term, the Treaty of Greenville, it's a review term. And let's think back. What is the Treaty of Greenville? What brought it about? Who was it between? Okay, so now that we've talked about the Treaty of Greenville, we know that the U.S., which was the original 13 colonies here on the East Coast, we know that the U.S. is expanding rapidly westward, especially into the Midwest right here, this really valuable farming land. So U.S. settlers continued to push westward into valuable farming lands. Let's move on to 3B. The expanding U.S. causes problems with First Nations, aka Native Americans. We call them First Nations because they were here first before European explorers. So, as we know, this area, the pink area and the New Louisiana Purchase, was not empty. It was inhabited by First Nations or Native American people. We're going to look at one specific example of the U.S. coming into conflict with the First Nation people. Just a little background information. Again, this is under 3B. William Henry Harrison, one of your key terms, is the governor of the Indiana Territory. He makes over 15 separate treaties with different Native American tribes. Basically, he wants to divide and conquer the tribe's land. One such treaty, the Treaty of Fort Wayne, basically makes the Native Americans give up almost all of current-day Indiana to the U.S. Well, one Native warrior and leader hears of this treaty. A man named Tecumseh. Tecumseh, also one of your key terms. Tecumseh is not happy with this Treaty of Fort Wayne. So I want us to look now and see exactly what Tecumseh says and what his beliefs are. So, now we move on to number 4, the Wars of 1812. Now, not everybody was happy that America was pushing westward. The British and many Native American tribes were very angry. So let's talk about 4A, the Wars of 1812. The first part of the Wars of 1812 was a war with the British. First part of the Wars of 1812 was a war with the British. Why? Well, the British were doing several things. Most importantly, the British were arming Native Americans. The British were giving weapons to Tecumseh, to his brother, the Prophet, and to many Native American tribes who didn't like the American expansion. The British also tried to invade the U.S. In fact, they kind of succeeded when they invaded the East Coast and burned D.C. Yes, they burned our national capital, the White House, the Capitol building. It all had to be rebuilt. Okay, and our focus today is going to be on the second part of these wars of 1812, the wars with First Nations, aka Native Americans. And these wars were largely led by these two men, Tecumseh and his twin brother, the Prophet. They were twins, both Shawnee Native Americans. Let's see what they look like. So, I'm not sure if you can see the resemblance here. Move it back a little bit. This is Tecumseh up here, and this is the Prophet, and I'll pass this around. Twin brothers, both fierce warriors. And again, they were receiving weapons from the British and fighting back against American settlers here in the West. Now, one Native American tribe that really liked Tecumseh and the Prophet's message of resistance were the Red Stick Creeks. You can see that right here. The Red Stick Creeks. They were a Native American tribe who lived here in Alabama and Mississippi, where there was a lot of westward expansion from U.S. settlers. And the Red Stick Creeks attacked Fort Mims. They did a surprise attack on Fort Mims. Fort Mims was a U.S. fort that held a lot of soldiers, families, and even some friendly Native American tribes. And at Fort Mims, the Red Stick Creeks did the Fort Mims Massacre. They killed over 500 U.S. settlers and Native Americans friendly to the U.S. So how does the U.S. react to the Fort Mims Massacre? Well, a guy named Andrew Jackson, who we'll see a lot later in U.S. history, Andrew Jackson says this is unacceptable. So Andrew Jackson gathers the U.S. Army, and they begin to fight back against the Red Stick Creeks and other hostile Native American tribes. Finally, Andrew Jackson defeats the Creeks and other Native American tribes at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in 1815. Again, the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in 1815. And Andrew Jackson makes those Native Americans who are fighting the U.S. sign the Treaty of Fort Jackson. The Treaty of Fort Jackson makes the Native American tribes give up a huge portion of land in the American South. Alabama, most of Mississippi, even parts of Georgia and Tennessee. So again, we see the Native Americans being defeated in battle and the U.S. making them sign treaties that give up huge parts of their land.